we heard a lot in the previous sessions about getting the policy right. That's one of the objectives to drive change. And of course, in this UNFCCC process, next year we have this new round of NDCs. So this is a real key time to be thinking about how we can get the right things in those. We've heard about data, we've heard about some country experiences, and two other key aspects to have good NDCs is to have the right insights. What is going on now? What are the trends that we need to build on? But also guidance on how to get this right in the next NDC. So that's going to be the focus of this session. We're going to try and go through the presentations quite quickly. They're quite short. And that will give us time to have a session of questions answered from the audience at the end. Okay? So that's how we're going to do this. So the first speaker is Jamie Leather from the Asian Development Bank. He leads the transport sector practice there. And they've been doing a lot of work looking into what's happening at the national level in the region. And so he's going to talk to us about the trends and the policy developments he's seeing in Asia. Jamie.
Thank you. I'll be very brief, but I just want to set the scene where we are with regards to data from the Asian Transport Outlook. And as you can see at the bottom, this is jointly developed by the Asian Development Bank and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It has been quite a while in the preparation, going back till 2019. We have 51 economies across Asia and the Pacific, 460 urban areas as well. But I will be very quick. Perhaps the most important slide is please have a look at this QR code. This overlaps quite a lot with what Wei Shen said in her presentation in terms of the NDCs, which is good news, because at least there is that consistency in the discussion. But this work was put together under using the ATO data and the policies within that, and I'll just highlight some of the key issues as we go through the slides. But it's part of UK FCDO and HVT program, so thanks to them, to Slocat and DT Global for allowing this work. But please do have a look at the QR code. It will allow me to go much quicker through these, or come and see me during the reception or during the second session here. Again, the number of countries, but we can see where these climate, the 26 countries here, and the types of policies that we're seeing in there. Just positioning Asia and the Pacific, very rapid growth. Unfortunately, these are the CO2 emissions. Unfortunately, Asia Pacific CO2 from transport sector is now larger than North America and Europe combined. So this trajectory is likely to go up and continue to accelerate. How do we fill that infrastructure gap? How do we meet that demand for travel, but do so in a much less emitting and a more sustainable way? On the other side, some good news. We're not following the pre-2015 Paris alignment growth rate, but we're not anywhere near the sort of 1.5 degrees. So looking at the policies and what those would mean in terms of sector emissions, considerable more work and aggressive actions are required. I will go through these very quickly. This is just to say what Wei Shen picked out. The NDCs and other transport policy documents, there are far more climate-related actions being put in official government transport documents that are translating their way into the NDCs. So these are official policies already made, already agreed. Somehow they're not getting in to the NDCs. Should be a quick win. And again, a rapid increase from 2015. So things are going in the right direction, but considerable more action is required. A lot of information here, but let me just pick out on a couple of specifics. Again, as Wei Shen was pointing out, very few specific clear targets. Bhutan, Maldives, PNG are one of the few countries within their NDCs that are looking at this, even less so on the adaptation side, Solomon Islands and Vanuatu. So very limited, meaningful, precise, targeted, time-bound targets for transport. Picking up on what Nicola said earlier in terms of these broader needs for sustainability, air pollution, road safety, access. Access is a critical issue. Just checking the numbers here. In Asia and Pacific, it's about 400 million do not meet the rural accessibility, SDG 9.1, and 1.4 billion don't meet the urban access, SDG 11.2. But there's a lot of co-benefits. If we're trying to do that, if we decarbonise the sector, if we increase non-motorised transport, shift from road to rail, we will clean the air. We will provide that access as well. Just going through a few specifics here. Public transport, a lot of focus has been given, and that is excellent for passenger transport within urban areas. E-mobility. If we look at the details of the policies, there is a large dominance of policy targets around new e-vehicle uptake. Maybe not as much as we need, but in comparison to other actions, a lot of focus on the improve part, the like-for-like switch. Take a dirty internal combustion engine and like-for-like switch to an e-vehicle. But we all know much more is needed, crucially across different transport modes, but the shifting between the modes and the better land use planning in other areas to try and reduce the need for travel in the first place. Another real gap is on the adaptation and resilience side. On the mitigation, yes, it's weak, but it's there, primarily around the infrastructure, charging infrastructure or e-vehicles, even less documentation on adaptation and resilience. Freight transport, I think we heard this from the Minister, a big gap, but a great opportunity as well. I would see a lot of these as opportunities. If we have significant accessibility gaps, if we have significant infrastructure gaps, how will that investment be made and in what type of way? So if we're shifting to greener investments, a lot of that infrastructure is starting. How do we ensure that we use data to put it on the right track to make those better informed decisions? And a lot more focus on the broader implications. It's not just CO2, it's the economic implications that transport provides as well. Another area that is lacking is capacity and institutional strengthening, not just within transport, but how transport talks to the other ministries and what is required in those areas as well. And final slide, just to summarize, I was trying to pick out some of the key actions. More ambitious targets, broader transport policies and bringing those into NDCs and others, expansion and improvement of public transport, fossil fuel subsidies, adaptation and climate resilience. We need to move from missing pieces of infrastructure, still very important, but system-wide climate resilient, safe road system management. That is, I think, a huge area. Freight industry was mentioned as well, and finance, which we'll be talking about in the next session. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Really, really useful analysis. Always good to remember that architecture of the Paris Agreement, we're working in these 5-year cycles, right? That was planned from the very beginning. And this idea that we're doing things, we're learning, we do better in the next time, that kind of positive progress with us, that's really, really useful analysis to inform that improvement. Our next speaker is Angad Gadgil from Gaia, who I've not met before, and I think Gaia is maybe not so well known in this use, so maybe it'd be great if you could start by giving some introduction to Gaia, your mission, before you talk to us about data, democratisation and decarbonisation.
Okay, thanks. Hello everyone, my name is Angad Gadgil. I am the managing partner of Growth and Innovation Alliance. We are a small boutique impact consultancy. We've been primarily working in the private sector, but we also have a research practice, and the past 5 years we've really ramped up the research practice because of certain insights that we got. We realized that we need to address some pain points in order to, help the private sector. Basically, we are in the third energy transition event after the industrial age. The first two took 80 and 60 years. to get mainstreamed. We don't have time to wait for the third to take 60 to 80 years. So what can we do to kind of accelerate that? That was the basic problem statement that we kind of looked at for the last 5 years. And how can mainstreaming be accelerated? How, apart from the physical scale that is required to achieve that cost parity, what can we do in order to increase the numbers? And for that, there are 4 major items that we need to look at. One is high quality mobility and transport energy ecosystem data, mobility, transport energy data computation tools, inclusion and accessibility of data tools for all, and training mechanisms for all. These are the key items that we will require to kind of moneyball and go into an accelerated energy transition much faster than the previous 2. So we kind of follow a very set way to make sure that a project is completely inclusive. We have been developing a lot of data tools, a lot of operational tools for the private sector, and now we have started publishing all of them and making them open source. We believe that innovation can only happen if everything is made open source, because we might not be the best people to, or we might not make the most efficient solution, right? So basically, we have undertaken multiple tools. A couple of the projects that we have undertaken have been funded by CCG and UK. One of them is we have created a transport energy data quality assessment toolkit, baseline to understand whether the data that you're using is the right data to use or not. We've not done the delta between what is the right data and what is not, but we can very comfortably tell whether the data is good to use or not to use. Similarly, there's a current ongoing project that we are doing along with a CCG partner university, that's Anna University in Chennai. What we're doing is we are building three sub-modules in this toolkit. One is a GIS-based EV charging location selector model, AI-based optimization model for EV charging planning, supply-demand mapping and matching, and a business model to kind of scale up the efforts, and anyone and everyone can just use the business model and start a charging or swapping company tomorrow. That is the idea, to basically open it up so that people don't have to spend time in building the business model. If you have the funds, you can actually start, and innovation can be accelerated. The other follow-up project that will be done after this is basically a deep dive into the resilience planning of this charging infrastructure and the Jesse impact on making the infrastructure more resilient. We also will be showcasing, along with an industry partner, a V2X solution for the probably the first time in India, along with a local government, to show that resilience can actually be accelerated if you decentralize power. This is an assumption that we're working on. The results might differ. The project has just started. Similarly, there were 2 other projects that we are in the process of completing. They're both based in the state of Maharashtra. One is basically to show decentralized green hydrogen infrastructure deployment. And we're working with a few farmers groups and figuring out use cases to see which nodal organization can be the anchor, capital expense anchor, and how can the ecosystem be created around it. And the second project is basically in the peri-urban and peri-urban and rural areas in a district in the state of Maharashtra, with a focus on school buses, because the public transportation for students is extremely low, and because of that, students cannot go ahead and study, and it is directly affecting education. So there is a multi-sectoral approach over here, and we're working with, for the last, this and the previous project, we're working with a development planning institute out of Pune.
One more minute.
Yeah. We're working with a private sector company to build, again, these are open source tools. They will be put out for the public, a complete ecosystem deployment toolkit, wherein you will get an app for fleet management. That's one of the deployment engine algorithms. And we are also planning to create toolkits for de-risking, for better financing. The idea is that the private sector can be empowered, and that actually fixes the mainstreaming, because the supply demand gets matched, and through tools we can actually achieve that, is what we believe. And we have estimated that if these tools are deployed at scale, we can actually reduce up to 70% of the existing emissions in the BAU scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I hope that was quick.
Yeah, that's great. So now we're going to change rhythm a little bit. We're going to go quickly through 5 specific tools that are available to help governments develop their NDCs. So many of you are working with governments in different ways, directly or indirectly, who have influence or friends who work there. So we're going to fly through these different tools. I'll invite, first of all, Jari Kauppila from the International Transport Forum. What are the templates and guidance that you've got to help countries develop their transport element of their NDCs, Jari?
Thank you very much, Mark. And I have a lot of slides, and I'm going to only show 2 of them. So we've seen many of them, and there's great presentations already about all the different tools, indicators, data that we have available. But I would just need to start with the fact that ITF is currently under the presidency of Chile. And Chilean government, during their presidency at ITF, have one of the top priority is decarbonisation and update of the NDCs. So as part of that, that's why we at the ITF have been working on building a guide to integrate transport into NDCs. This is something that we work with many of you here. Thank you very much for your support and help as well, for providing comments, feedback. The idea really is to align the approaches that countries have across the countries on implementing NDCs, shaping international efforts, help investors make effective decisions based on these NDCs. So it needs a clear structure, clear approach that countries can follow. It has concrete examples of possible targets, goals, measures that you can put in place. It draws a lot from our Transport Climate Action Directory, which includes over 80 actual quantitative measures on transport policies. How will they impact transport CO2 emissions? So a lot of these examples are in the guideline, and I'm happy to share this one copy that I have with me here today. It's going to be launched on Wednesday at the ministerial meeting with the ministers around as well. It is structured around 6 themes, where what we propose is sort of 6 steps in incorporating transport NDCs. We should start with the targets. Again, here we have several examples in how some countries have put target. We know only 33% have done it. It also calls to set out a vision for the future of low carbon transport system overall. Important is setting goals for all the specific transport modes using the avoid, shift and improve approach. And more importantly, set out concrete measures to be implemented that will really enable the delivery of each goal. But it also has guidance on governance and monitoring and evaluation, and we heard a lot about those indicators that are super crucial for us to be able to see how we are going forward, how these NDCs actually delivering the promise. And then the part of the investment, very, very important, especially for emerging economies and global south, and how do you set those targets and measures put in place as well. So these were the 2 slides I promised to show only. We leave the slides for future references and more information. I would just need to say that, again, this is going to be launched on Wednesday, so it's going to be available on our website, itf-oecd.org. But also already Minister Munoz from Chile has shared this with all the ministers of our member countries, 69 member countries, urging them to use this as a guideline for implementing and updating the NDCs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jari. Thank you. Hold any questions you have, because there'll be a time later for any questions. I'd now like to invite Mohamed Hegazy to take the floor from Transport for Cairo. Many of you will also know him as part of the Transport Champions team, as Transport lead, so kind of here at the COP with kind of a dual hat. But it came up several times already, this question of popular transport, the importance of this sector, but also the difficulties of understanding and engaging with it. So what have you managed to come up with for guidance for the popular transport sector?
Well, sure thing. Today representing my company, you know me and my champions work, but actually in the presentation I'm representing the Global Network for Popular Transport, because together with them we supported them in creating the global NDC template for popular transport. And the reason we worked on it is quite simple. We saw that the great minds present in the room were proposing these modal NDC templates, and we're like, where the hell are we? We're missing. We gotta catch the train. So, popular transport is the modes that more than half of the world's population use every day to go to work. They're the jeepneys in Manila, they are the tuk-tuks, microbuses in my country are not there, here's an informal boat, they are quite multimodal. So we created a fourth one. And I even had to put the picture because my own team sent me the slides without our template. That's how fresh it is. So these are the 6 steps. There is an entire framework, but you can read about it because it has been published. What I want to take you through is the real detail of the vision and what came into it, because it really gathers a lot of thought. We had like a 1-week retreat, 20 of the greatest minds in transport coming together, and this is what we came up with. More of them is laughing. We imagined a future in which popular transport is sustainable, because very quickly we got told that it is about sustainable development. The MDBs, there are lots of calls going to them. Their original mission was poverty alleviation, and now we recognize climate as a poverty contributor. But poverty alleviation is still quite there, so sustainable development is the very first thing that's in that future we need. It's about resilience, it's about survival, and resilience is not just physical from water and heat, it's also economic resilience. Imagine being stuck at home during COVID and not having your daily income, and that's what you depend on. Safe, comfortable, accessible, affordable, the quality of the systems. And you know why I lumped them together? Because this is ultimately about dignity. It's about publicly supporting them, because these are the ultimate private sector micro-entrepreneurs. They bring their own funding, they bring their own operational costs. And by integrating them into transport planning and national climate action, we hope that they can get some public support to really elevate them and achieve all of these things that we hope for. It's about sustaining local economies, and it's about ensuring decent jobs. The first thing I learned when I started working on this field is it's an employment generator first and a transport solution second. And we need this because the workers are plenty and many, but the users rely on them to get to work. So, again, some theoretical stuff, you can read it. We've got some really important names in our peer review committee, some more important names in our advisory committee, so there is a lot of buy-in into this, and this is it. Scan it, download it, read it, enjoy it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think that's perfect to give people a sense of what's there and what they can get out of it. So, from one extreme to the other, we've gone from those small micro enterprises, now we come to the rail sector, which is almost like the other extreme. I'd invite Lucie Anderton to come from the International Union of Railways, UIC. So what guidance have you put together for your members?
Thank you. Well, it's lovely to see you, and it's really lovely to be on this panel because we're all great colleagues, in fact, aren't we? And this year and the year before, in fact, we've worked together even closer, and all the presentations you've heard, you'll start to hear the same kind of messages because we've all been working very much aligned, and therefore we've all done NDC analysis together. We're all working on templates together, so that we're actually not repeating, not confusing, but actually trying to help parties countries and transport ministries to get more involved in this process, because it's not an easy process, and we really want to be helpful. So we're one of this community of people trying to be helpful to really get sustainable transport in a better shape when it comes to NDCs, because like all the other presentations that you've heard today, where am I supposed to click? The other direction? Maybe it's run out of battery. Yeah. So I can use the key.
I promise I didn't ruin it.
Your energy was just.
Enjoy the beautiful picture.
You're gonna sing,
I'm not having a drink yet, I'm not ready for karaoke. Yeah. Lovely. So yeah, like many, like all of us, we found that NDCs were lacking when it came to transport, and often they're lacking in sectorial targets altogether, and particularly in transport. And about a quarter of the NDCs at the moment have got rail mentioned at all. So that's only a quarter that are really thinking about railway as a climate solution, and even less have got specific targets. So you've heard lots of times people are talking about, yes, we need sustainable transport, but often they're not really measurable targets, they're not really specific enough to be actionable, or certainly not to be financed. So we found about 10% of the NDCs did have something specific. So for example, the Turkish NDC was super specific in that it had exact numbers of kilometres of railways they're looking to build and expand. And they were talking about the exact modal shift that they were looking for in both passenger and in freight. And they were quite ambitious. So they were quite specific of exact numbers of what they were intending to deliver as part of their NDC. We also found that there's really a lack of comprehension. So there's some often talking about mitigation, but as you say, adaptation is often missing. So there's some talking about passenger, but often the freight picture is missing. So it's really looking at how we can build more comprehensive NDCs, so they're thinking about more of the opportunities, because there's really, as you say, it's a lack of opportunities. And now 2025 is a huge opportunity. All the countries need to boost their ambition, and we know that there's ambition that's sitting there in national policies and strategies that can move into the NDCs and really bring that coherence across the policy space. So those QR code cards, the first one is our NDC analysis last year, and the bottom one there is the NDC template, and they're both hopefully useful for those working in this space. And this is just a little summary of that template, which we're really looking at a sort of matrix point of view, in that we're thinking, if you're looking to build rail into your NDC, think about not just modal shift, think also about your network development and expansion, and also you can think about electrification. So a range of different measures that you can introduce. Don't just think about passenger, also think about freight, and also think about adaptation. So it's a little a way to sort of bring that comprehension side. And we're talking about, like others, having that cohesive, comprehensive, clear, measurable statistics. And actually, one of the big things is this conditional versus unconditional, which I think we've not talked about a lot yet. And I think that's vital, especially those in developing countries, low middle income countries, must have your conditional NDCs, because they will be the key and unlock climate finance for you. So show your ambition in your unconditional NDC and say, and you know what, if you give us this kind of climate finance, we can do so much more. And so there are some really great examples of that already that you'll be able to find in our tracker. They're able to say, for example, in Bangladesh, they say we're going to aim for a 10% modal shift to rail, but with the right investment, we can give you 25%. So they're setting out exactly, and they're looking for billions of dollars for this. But by setting out in their conditional NDC, they're going to really help unlock that climate finance flow. I think that's me.
Thank you, Lucie. Great reminder about the importance of conditional commitments, right? Particularly here at the Climate COP. So, showing the richer countries what additional kind of commitments countries are prepared to take if they get the right support. Right, in our 2 more to go, I'd like to now invite Philip Turner from the International Union of Public Transport to show a little bit of what they're doing on the public transport NDC template.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I've got a confession. I love NDCs. And they're really important to public transport, but a third of NDCs do not include public transport interventions, but when they do, they're kind of quite vague about what they're trying to do. And so, I mean, we spoke about doubling share of public transport, what can that do? But really, in a very short amount of time, that can reduce urban emissions by half. So this is why we see the NDCs as a real opportunity for the public transport sector. I think as a sector, they're very good about saying what they want their mayors to do. They're not very good about saying what they want their national governments to do. They don't really know. So this is really the driving force behind our template, because 20% of policy levers at the local level on transport is driven by national governments. So this is why we really see the value of developing this template, which really acts as a checklist or a guide about what countries can do, so to ensure that they've got the right interventions there. I think as Lucie mentioned, we've all followed the same kind of methodology, starting with a vision. Obviously, we want public transport to be the heart of urban mobility. But NDCs don't really say that. I think having that recommendation up front. Obviously, goals, we had the global stock take, it talked about a range of pathways, whatever that means. So what we've done is we've tried to articulate what that means for public transport, so beyond electrification, looking at mode shift like they have in Malawi's NDC, and developing infrastructure. So very much looking at what was agreed last year and trying to translate that into targets. Obviously, you need to do things in order to deliver those targets, and a lot of NDCs actually include a lot of the right interventions that we want in there. So we're not making this stuff up. And we went to public transport authorities, operators in the industry, saying what are the most important things that national governments can do to help you do your job better. So they came up with 14. Built around 3 objectives, so supporting a shift in people's mobility habits, looking at information awareness, transport demand management programs like they've got in Bahamas. Secondly was designing cities around people and investing in urban mobility. So this is looking at regulations when it comes to land use, so on and so forth, like they've got in Mexico, but also things like land value capture, and removal of fossil fuel subsidies like they've got in Indonesia, and redirecting that to public transport. Finally, enabling cities. So this is really looking at capacity building and governance frameworks. Uruguay's got a great set of interventions based around this. So what we're trying to really do is highlight that national governments do want to do these things as well. I think the last bit is really making that link to the SDG agenda. That's critical, especially when we need to report that local level information that is captured and to feed it up to the national level. I think the challenge for us now is we need to get countries to use them. So that's what we have to do. And I think no better way of building a whole capacity building program around this work would be ideal. So thank you.
Thank you, Philip. We all heard earlier on about the rapid shift to urban population, so the importance of getting that bit right in that urban thing is really important. So Last but not least, we're going to turn to active mobility. Delighted to introduce Jill Warren from the European Cycling Federation, who has been instrumental these last years in getting walking and cycling to be really taken seriously in these processes. So congratulations for that. What guidance and help are you providing?
Well, thank you very much. So I'm here on behalf of ECF, but also on behalf of the Partnership for Active Travel and Health. That's a new coalition formed in 2022 to help unlock the enormous potential that walking and cycling has to mitigate climate change and to improve people's health and lives. What is that potential? Well, 60% of urban trips are less than 5 kilometers. That's a distance that's eminently walkable or cyclable, but today more than half those trips are taken by a motorized vehicle. So we need to have a lot more of those trips taken by foot or by biking. So just a question to see if everyone is still awake after all these presentations, although I'm sure you are because they were very exciting presentations. How many people think that governments consistently, and the majority of them, would consider walking and or cycling to be fully fledged modes of transport? Okay. So you see, we have a very long way to go still. All right. But we want to be helpful. We want to help them to do that and to do better. We analyzed, first of all, what does it look like worldwide in terms of walking policies, cycling policies, and walking cycling content in NDCs. What we found is a lot of improvement is needed everywhere. So, there's some bright spots, but basically, sometimes, a lot of times there's no mention at all, there's no policy at all, there's only a very, very cursory mention that's not actionable, not financed, nothing like that. So there's still a lot of potential there as well to do quite a bit more. So we created a template NDC for walking and cycling with step-by-step guidance to help governments to integrate walking and cycling into their NDCs and to use them as ways to make their climate commitments. And we also start with a vision, because it's very important to know what you want to do, of course, and goals. What does success look like? Objectives, what are the targets we're trying to achieve there? What are the actions and planned activities, the measures, and the outcomes? Now, the 5 maybe key areas where we see that things need to happen to move the needle are infrastructure. As far as cycling goes, the number one reason people give for not cycling or not cycling more or not allowing their children to cycle is that feeling of safety. That comes through the infrastructure first and foremost. Campaigns are needed to support a shift in people's mobility habits. Land use planning, integration with public transport to support sustainable longer journeys. And also the capacity building, because we know that those skills are not so universal in terms of, traffic engineers have been taught different things than what people who would develop good walking and cycling infrastructure would need to know. So there's a lot of really great content there. We've also produced, besides our initial report that kind of quantified all of this potential, we have the regional fact sheets that really break down by region what it looks like in terms of the policies or lack thereof. Our active travel NDC template, which I've just mentioned, but also, as of last week, brand new, hot off the press, we have a set of 20 case studies that illustrates those kind of 20 different actions that we suggest in the template. So do have a look and you can see where some great things are happening around the world. And I think, did I have another slide or that's it? I think that's it. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill, and thanks to all of you for sticking to the planned time. That's great. There must be some questions following from those presentations, so let's see if we can wake up some of the people at the back that are hiding.
Hi all, it's Jari Kauppila here from the International Transport Workers Federation. So thank you firstly for all the work in trying to make the NDCs much stronger as we move forward. One thing that we've been learning as we've been going through the process this year is a few gaps that still need to be resolved. So we know within the some of the NDC templates, just transition was missing, and that's really a problem. We do need to make sure that everything is consistent. So we did have some good work with the popular transport template and with the International Transport Forum template guidance. And so we just suggest that the language there around how to make sure jobs, working conditions, and skills are all brought in, are brought together with the template work that's been done with the various sectors. Thank you.
Thank you. Kind of a comment. A question or a response? Okay, did you want to come back on that or?
Just to say thank you very much for supporting our template as well.
Okay, Marusha?
I see a question there. I can go after.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Sorry, I thought I was in the queue. I wasn't.
Don't wait.
Yeah, as somebody who's been knocked off my bicycle a couple of times trying to cycle to work, I really appreciate the presentation. But one thing that does strike, and it seems to be quite common as well, is that all of the different planning that's out there, we've got these traditions, and we don't easily go across silos. Is there some way in which we could create a forum for the difficult problems and just surface those up, as opposed to just trying to, cope with them as we do our regular planning? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. We focus a lot on intermodality, multimodality in the work that we do, certainly in the Cyclist Federation, whether it's the bike-train combination, the bike-public transport combination, shared bikes, which we would see as public transport, which often aren't viewed as public transport. So yeah, it is an important point.
Thank you. I want to respond to you and then provide a general comment. So first of all, very proud that we have our full name. We also have an acronym, it's DFC. And with the team, we actually started working very early with the PASS Coalition on a localized project in Egypt to bring the template and localize it to Egypt. Create a very specific recommendation for what it would look like in an Egyptian context and engaging with local policymakers. And this was a project. And I think that we then expanded this project to include all of the templates. And this is something that I believe could be potentially replicable, particularly through entities such as the GIZ, which have influence on a lot of the NDC production processes, particularly in Southeast Asia, if I understand correctly. And I want to add another comment very quickly. I just want to highlight that there was an amount of collaboration in this community throughout the year in producing this that was very, very high. And it was like literally PASS Coalition sharing, the before finished draft. Philip, thank you also for sharing this draft. And then we shared it with the ITF team in the production process and in the publication. And then the first thing we did when we finished the popular transport one was presented to a UITP working group to have like this kind of alignment in the content. And I think that this level of collaboration is something that makes them all actually not 5 separate templates, but one piece of a big puzzle.
Sorry, can I just very short comment, because I really want to reinforce that point that you see a lot of joint elements, common elements in all of the templates, and I think that's a testament to the collaboration that has been done throughout. I think the next step for us is as a community is to actually work that this will be implemented and taken on board.
Thanks very much, conscious of time, but I just want to be a devil's advocate. Not that I think what I'm going to say, but I just want to go and I will on my friends here a question that somehow we have been already hearing, which is like, okay, so in the past we had hardly no guidance at all on transport in the NDCs, and suddenly we have all these guidance. Isn't it too much? Isn't it too many things? Isn't it too repetitive? I don't believe that. But I want to hear from you, how would you react to that observation? If somebody said, like, do we really need so many sectorial templates? Aren't we just flooding a government potentially with so many different guidelines? How do we agglomerate? Again, I insist, I don't believe that's the case, but I heard that, for instance, at the World Urban Forum, where I was a couple of weeks ago. So I would just like you to take that.
Hang on a second, why don't we give the first response to someone who's working for a government? Are you prepared to answer this question?
I'm going to give it one of that. Yeah.
You prepared to try and answer that before we give you Jari?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I think they did a great job, to reach a time where the transport voice can be heard within the overall COP business. I think we should clap for all of them. Really, they did a good job. But still, I believe that there is a way to kind of put all these synergies together. As my sister was highlighting it, I also picked that as an observation. I will be traveling back 2 days after. What will I go with?
Yeah.
What can be my takeaway? 2025 is ahead, just tomorrow. Can someone, work on that exercise to ensure that we grab the same message out of the work they do? I think there is a way that you can put their work together and have like a single template that can be a guidance for all of us. Thank you.
So briefly, then Jill, and then Jari.
It is a very interesting question. I personally think it's great that we have all these different templates because different countries are in such different stages of what they're doing. And the slightly different approaches that they have may speak more to one or to the other. And then you've got the ITF template that makes reference to and links to all of them, which I think is brilliant. And can I just say, I'm not going to name the country, but on Friday, I got an email that somebody from one of the ministries who had received the ITF template said, "Can you tell me what ECF thinks of the cycling stuff in this document?" And we said, we love it because, basically.
Thank you for that endorsement. but it is, so I would say that the ITF guide is sort of an overarching guide that then from there you go to the mode specific. So what we say there, we need a vision, we need a goal for each mode. And then actually here in template, we have reference then to the mode specific template as an example of here's the, if you want to do that for active mobility, if you want to do that for public transport, etc. So there's always a link. But like I said earlier, I think we have the messages that is that you need vision, you need goals, you need targets, etc. And just on the goal side, set goal for each mode of transport, but also set goals for all elements. Avoid, shift, improve. Right now, 51% of the NDCs are on improve. It's only 30% on shift and only 11% on avoid. So that's also another way of looking at it, that remember to have all the different elements.
Okay. Yeah. Question at the back has been waiting, and then we'll come to the front.
Hello, my name is Sophie Punter from LifeLinks. I have a question. I recall, for example, the Asian Transport Outlook, that they said something like 90% of all the policies are hidden in existing policies, not in NDCs. So that's somewhat misleading to say NDCs don't cover it. So my question is to you is, to what extent does those templates build on what already exists, in other words, pulls up what's already in existing policies instead of impose what you would like companies to do, or for countries to do new, or because I think that if you build on what already exists and pull it out and cherish that, you're going to get much further, because then you lay the ownership with the countries instead of coming up with a new thing. So does your template take into account what already exists and drawing on the Asian Transport Outlook as an inspiration? Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie, for the inspiration. I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of bottom-up, but the bottom-up, what is there is quite technical and quite focused, and it misses the cross-modality that's required, or that strategic objective in urban area, 70-30 split, 70 public transport, non-motorized. If you have that hierarching top-down approach with the bottom-up battery technology and the sort of specific, somewhere you'll meet in the middle that has this avoid, shift, improve, and then get down into the details. So I think we need both. From those bottom up, the best examples, as many people have highlighted, what does it actually mean? And we can put those in boxes and demonstrate that.
Yes, I think it's on. Is it? Yes, thank you. Paula Vieira, Director General of Environmental Policy for the Government of Canada's Transport Department. I think this is great, and the more templates that really look at very specific modes, the better. I do have a but though, and it's timing. If this overall guide is coming out in the next couple of days, and I know ministers have had a bit of a preview and a bunch of things were released this week, the reality is most countries will be submitting their new plans in February. For example, Canada will be approving this week. They must approve by law by December 1st its new NDC. So I think this was a lot of work, but how confident are we that these kinds of tools and these kinds of insights will be present in the next round of NDCs, given how late some of this is coming out with the timing of the next round of NDCs. I know that, you know, there's a date in February and they can go as late into the year, but many countries are approving them right now. So how confident are we that this thinking and all of this work will get integrated into the next group?
Thank you. So we're coming to the end of the time, so the last statements.
We actually published our NDC template a year ago, so in advance of COP last year, already sounding the alarm bell saying there's so much more work that needs to be done, here's the guidance, and we've been shopping it around ever since. I appreciate it may not have come to everyone's attention in time, but I guess better late than never.
I'll be very quick. I think the lesson that we sort of took from the second round of NDCs is that they're constantly being updated.
Yeah.
So while I do take the point, it might be short till February, I think it really is an ongoing thing, and that we're always kind of hearing, how can we make it better? So I think there's that opportunity.
And we saw that in the last round, that a lot of them came in late, and actually they're coming in more linked to national political cycles or other things are driving them. And if UNFCCC deadlines weren't that effective, I think. But also a reminder, this is the 5-year cycle, right? It's doing better this time, learning more, doing better. That 5-year cycle is also. So I'm afraid.
If I may, as government, working for the government of Canada as well, to say that point well taken. And I think we need to do better as a community here as well, to share this information well enough on time. Also inform the governments about the wealth of knowledge that exists there already. And so these are comprising the things that we have had already before. Point very well taken. Thank you.
Yeah. And I would also say that as national representative, you have fora, regional fora, international fora where you're present, where some of these actors are not, so you can also help with that kind of dissemination through your own networks and your own contacts. So I'm afraid we have to stop there for the next panel. Thank you all, and thank you for the